Past Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot bust onto the scene around 2019, and she got 70 something percent, like 70% of the vote to become Chicago's mayor. She was like the first, I think, black, gay mayor, LGBT mayor, and they made a big deal about that. And she was a very astute lawyer. Went to the University of Chicago for law. She also went to the University of Michigan as an undergrad, so she was very educated. But what she claimed to do was come into Chicago and halt crime. And under Lori Lightfoot, the police budget went up, and crime was at an all-time high. I mean, bodies was falling everywhere. And Lori Lightfoot just seemed to didn't have an answer for it. And in fairness to Lori Lightfoot, Chicago has always been a bullet-ridden gangster city. So I think that it was unfair for them to bring her on and think that she was going to be the one to stop crime when Chicago has always been this way since the Tommy gun and the drive-by days of Prohibition. That Chicago always been like that. But under her leadership, a lot of corporations started to leave Chicago and reinvest in other states. One of those corporations and companies was Boeing. Boeing left Chicago high and dry. And Chicago, Chicago has been a struggling city. But let's check out what Lori Lightfoot had to say. We'll come right back.
Thanks, Mayor. There have been a number of high-profile corporate departures from Chicago, like Boeing moving to Virginia, Citadel moving earlier this summer. What impact do you think that those departures will have on budget revenues, and what is the city doing to keep corporate headquarters?
Little to none. What I think you also need to report is the number of corporations that have moved into Chicago that have made these investments. We had over 173 companies last year make pro-Chicago decisions. That's either moving here and relocating from someplace else or expanding their footprint in Chicago. We're on the same pace and may exceed that number this year. So, yeah, we don't want to lose any businesses, but I think you said Citadel, Boeing, and you mentioned one other. Okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate that those companies choose to relocate, but what I'm focused on is the companies that are betting on Chicago. Google, Kellogg, Abbott Labs, and others, and big, notable household names, international companies that are finding what they need here in the city of Chicago to keep our economy booming. We had a phenomenal 2021, and I expect we're continuing to see the recovery from COVID-19 flow into 2022.
So as it goes in these Democratic black cities, out goes Lori, and here comes the incoming mayor, Brandon Johnson. And his fight now in Chicago was the migrant crisis. And a lot of black people don't like Brandon Johnson because they're saying that he's supporting the migrant crisis. But we need to educate ourselves on one thing. This migrant crisis is something that goes on every 10 to 15 years in this country. Go back to 1981 in the 80s and look at the situation with Ronald Reagan when he was running for president. I think it was Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. And they had the same issue with the migrant crisis. The only thing was it was flipped around. The Republicans were supporting the migrants and bringing them in, and the American people was upset, and the Democrats was going hard against the migrants. And they even started passing laws and putting migrant bills in. Then you go to Bill Clinton. When he was running for president, it was the same thing. It was the migrant situation. So what happens is this black mayor is a stool pigeon. He's a pawn being used because Chicago is the third biggest city in America, and the government now is bringing in these immigrants and they're finding places to place them. So when you get these mayors and this stuff is over their head. It's bigger than Brandon Johnson. So it's bigger than just a so-called black Democrat city because, hey, I'm in here in Philadelphia and they overrunning us as well. But this is all government done, government control. So when you see him on the podium and he just saying a whole bunch of word salad, that's because he don't have the power to stop it. He don't have the power to stop it. And a lot of us, we don't study history to understand how this thing operates and why America brings in every 10 years a large influx of immigrants. Where does this come from and why? Why? What we do is we look at what's happening on the ground in the cities that we come from. So they things that was promised to so-called African Americans, we start seeing them give it to immigrants. This is not new. This is nothing new. They was doing this in the 80s. They was doing this in the 90s. These are the same arguments. These are the same arguments. So you have people all on Fox News, going after Brandon Johnson, and was one brother on there saying that the governor down in Texas didn't call Chicago a sanctuary city. Brandon Johnson did. Check this out.
Governor of Texas didn't call Chicago a sanctuary city. The mayor called Chicago a sanctuary city. The mayor allowed illegal migrants to come in here and pay them with taxpayer dollars. The thing about it is, our mayor has no plan now. He's having panic attacks. We need to actually recall the mayor.
So now you see this black man that goes on Fox News, and he's basically saying that they got to get Brandon Johnson out of there. Who's going to come replace Brandon Johnson, and who's going to be the one to tell the big bad government, no, you can't use Chicago as a city to bring in these immigrants. We don't have money for the people of Chicago. No, we don't have money to build up these dilapidated buildings and revamp the city and do all that kind of stuff. But we definitely got money for these migrants. We definitely got money to revamp buildings to put migrants in. We definitely got resources to put them inside these schools and all this kind of stuff. But no, not for the city. Who's going to be the big bad person to stand up and stop the government from doing that? See, all this stuff is a crock of crap. And this been going on in this country. It's been going on in this country. But there was a sister from the Nation of Islam that came up and she spoke to Brandon Johnson one time in a town hall meeting. Let's check out what she had to say.
You have always been on the right side of history. That's why I campaigned for you, and that's why I voted for you. That's why I encouraged others to vote for you, because I knew and I felt in my heart you would be on the right side of history. And that meant including your people, descendants of enslaved Africans. Brother, you got to stop the buses from coming in. You just got to stop the buses coming in because it's hurting your people. I'm talking about descendants of enslaved Africans. We're hurting the things that our people been on the waiting list come for. The immigrants are coming in, getting everything, and I don't have time to go into all of it because I have another concern. When I used to come down here under Harold Washington and we were fighting Ed Burt, Badoliak, and the rest of the haters of black people that sat in these seats down here, we had two Latino aldermen. We had Luis Gutierrez and Jesus Garcia. They never pushed a black woman around. They never voted against black people's issues. They never held meetings behind Mayor Washington's back to form committees. They never tried to take black wards and black precincts. I thought we were on our way to a black and brown coalition.
So again, we all heard what the sister had to say. And get those buses out of there. Get those buses that's coming through Philadelphia, that's coming through Newark, New Jersey, and New York City, that's coming through Boston. They sending them through Chicago. They sending them through California, all through Texas. Yeah, they bringing them all through, right? I want to know who, since everybody has something to say, who's going to be the person that's going to have the power to stop it? None of you guys. This is what the government is doing. And Brandon Johnson is a one-term mayor fall guy that they're using to be the fall guy and to be the face of saying, see, this black man is the reason why all these immigrants came in here. Well, you're not looking at the hidden hand behind the scenes, man. I keep trying to tell y'all, you got to study history. You got to look at the immigration crisis of 1980, the immigration crisis during the Clinton administrations. It's the same arguments, man. It's the same thing going on, just being replayed over again. But let's check out again what Brandon Johnson had to say when he was pressed.
Of the work from the state as well as from the county and the work that they have done and what they are committed to continuing to do.
But when the mayor was asked about the city committing to fund the remaining $71 million needed for migrant care, he repeatedly dodged the questions.
There are a lot of things to consider in this entire operation. It's not just financial resources. I'm committed to this mission as I've been. And I'm grateful that we have partners at the state level and the county level who are also committed to this mission.
If we could get an answer to whether $71 million will be committed by the city for this part of the mission after the state and the county committed theirs. The mayor did not answer that question, instead pivoting to talk about the overall operation. The governor saying in a statement, it is clear the state, county, and city will have to do more to keep people safe. And Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle adding, we cannot wait for additional resources. Mayor Johnson, after being pressed numerous times by reporters, suggesting that he was counting on the city's $71 million portion of this year's migrant funding to come from the feds.
But the goal is to ultimately challenge the federal government to.
But why is Brandon Johnson saying this, right? Why is he being forced to say this? Let's check it out.
It's called Johnson's decision a strange move, given that he calls himself a collaborator.
Clearly, he's been under a lot of pressure from the Black community, particularly from the Black members of the city council for months about the distribution of resources to Black communities. And perhaps he felt as though if he made this kind of a commitment to migrants, that there'd be a lot of backlash.
So again, you have a lot of disgruntled Black people, but you have the Democrats and Republicans running the same game. So now Fox News is taking to media to now all of a sudden want to interview Black people that's disgruntled with the Democratic Party and basically highlight what's going on in the Black community. All of a sudden they care. We want to put the cameras down and we want to interview Black people on the ground to see how they feel about this immigrant crisis. So let's check out what some of the Black folks had to say.
Clear, we were able to stop the city from putting the migrants in the school building. So they're not in our school building here in the city of Chicago. We were successful in that aspect. But what we see across the city of Chicago is that they're getting access to, they're getting up to $9,000 in funding. They're getting access, they're getting rental assistance, they're getting support, free childcare, free transportation, and with the housing situation, we're noticing now the city of Chicago has been scrambling to really find places for them to go. So they're making deals with landowners. And the problem with that is that in the Black community, there's a lot of absent landowners and they've left dilapidated properties in our neighborhoods. We have fought for years to try to get those dilapidated properties to come back into the community. And now all of a sudden, now that there's this money falling from out the sky for migrants, these landowners are now using the money to renovate to allow migrants to get in. Let me give you an example. This one landowner in South Shore has a 8-unit building, designated 8-unit building. This man was allowed by the city of Chicago to turn this 8-unit building into a bed for 69 migrants. And he's already have a history of being a slum landlord. So we're now beginning to see that they're prioritizing migrants in housing and then also utilizing land that really should be renovated and brought back into the community.
So it's the same game that's being played. The Republicans is using disgruntled Black voters to say, hey, you're a Democrat. Look at what they're doing to you. Come over here to us. If you go back to when Bill Clinton was running for president at the time, they used that bill, the 94 crime bill, and was saying, hey, look at what the Democrats are doing. But I'm gonna tell you this: when you're dealing with immigration, we got to go back. We got to go back to and remember the 1986, the Immigration Reform and Control Act that was put in place that granted the legalization of millions of unauthorized immigrants, mainly from Latin America, who met certain conditions. They let them in. And then the Immigration Act of 1990. We got to go into the immigration argument during the president campaign between Bush and Ronald Reagan. During 1980, you also got to go back to the immigration situation in the 90s with Bill Clinton when he spoke on illegal immigration in 1995 at the State of the Union. Also Hillary Clinton on the reforms. So this is something that's been going on. Y'all looking at the now, but you don't study history to understand why you have it now. So Brandon Johnson is a pawn, is a small fish in a big ocean. He has no power. He's a highly paid contractor to come in and do what he's told. He can't stop those buses. He can't stop the immigrants from coming in. He don't have the power. They already have bills that's set on federal books, right? That despite the laws that we have for the American people, we gonna do this anyway. And they've been doing it. They've been doing it. They've been running the same play on the people forever. The problem is we don't never have a cerebral attack as to how we should attack the situation. We do it emotionally. And we really think that the Democrat and the Republican Party is really on our side. No, they on the same side pushing an agenda, and they keep division. That's how they stay in power. Brandon Johnson has no power. It wouldn't matter if it was a white mayor. They have no power. This is going to be done regardless, because historically it's always been done this way. This is the way that they do it. They did it in the 60s. They did it in 1952. Man, listen. They did this thing in 52 when they was bringing in Asians. They did it in the 70s when you had a lot of Nicaraguans and Chinese and Haitians coming through. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. And those of us that have really been pressing and teaching this history for years, we already know what's on the books. We already know what's happening. It has nothing to do with blacks not being able to run Democrat cities. It's way bigger than that. But I'm going to cut my video short here. Leave your comments in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think, man. Subscribe to Street Media TV. And remember, study history. Go back and look at the debates between George Bush Sr. and Ronald Reagan from 1980. Go listen to Bill Clinton's State of the Union speech in 1995. Look up the 1986 Immigration Reform Control Act. Look up all these different things, man, and educate yourself before you start talking. Peace.